What's up, everybody? This is John from Coding Addict, and welcome to React Router 6 tutorial video. Now, if you're not familiar with React Router, it's an awesome library that makes building single-page applications with React a breeze. So, unlike the traditional multi-page applications, where we run back to the server every time we navigate to the page, with single-page applications, we load all of our HTML and JavaScript in one page, more specifically in one div, and handle the rest of the logic with the help of JavaScript. And as a result, our projects get that snappy app-like feel. Now, since React does not have built-in routing solutions, that's why we reach for extra library. And by far the most popular option out there is React Router. And version 6 is just the latest and greatest option with a bunch of cool new features and custom hooks. So if we take a look at the typical multi-page application, we'll notice that every time we navigate to a page, we trigger full page refresh because browser needs to run back to the server, get the contents, and then display them. Unlike the React application, where changes happen instantly. Notice we get this snappy response. And the reason for that is because we have single page application. So like I said, we have single page, more specifically, we have single div with an ID of root. And then all the changes get handled by JavaScript. And therefore the contents of the page load instantly without the full page refresh. In order to follow along, you'll need a star, and it's located in this repo. So look for my GitHub, and then more specifically, repo by the name of React Router 6 tutorial. Then I'm going to go for download option. After that, I'm going to navigate to my downloads, crack it open, drag and drop. So now it's sitting on the desktop. Then I think I'll rename it. I'm just going to go with React Router. After that, I want to open up Visual Studio Code, drag and drop, set right away, side by side with the browser. And then we want to open up the integrated terminal, and we want to go with npm install, and right away npm start. And essentially, this is a boilerplate React application. Effectively, I created with Create React App. And in here, you'll just find some useful resources so we don't have to type out some boilerplate code. So in the source, there's a final folder where you'll find complete application. So if you ever need to reference the code that I type in the videos, you can find it over there. We also have a pages folder, and you'll see in the following videos why we have it there. Effectively, it's just bunch of React components. And again, we'll talk about them in a few videos. After that, we have app.js, where we just have a heading 2 with this text. Data.js, also something that we'll implement a little bit later. Index.css with all of the styling. Now, there's not much to it, but still, I added a little bit of styling here. And of course, index.js. And also in the root, you'll find README, where I wrote down all the steps we're going to take throughout this project. And if you see in the browser React Router 6 tutorial, then we're in good shape and we can start exploring React Router 6. Okay, and before we start typing away, let me just mention a few things. First, if you ever want to run the complete application, so not just reference the code in the final one, but if you actually want to see some feature in action, just go to index.js and swap the app.js files. So essentially, you want to get the app.js from the final folder. So like I said, final folder is where you'll find complete application. And in here, there's also a app.js. So just go to index.js, get the app.js from the final folder. And I already added the code. You just need to comment the first one out. and uncomment the last one. Then if you ever need a reference to official documentation, I left it in the README a link. So if you click on this link, you'll navigate to the official docs of React Router 6. And when it comes to install for your own projects, the command you're looking for is npm install React Router DOM at 6. Now, of course, I already installed this package in this project, but just so you don't think that there's some funny business going on, let me open up here the terminal. I'll clear everything. I'll run the command. And once the install is complete in a package.json, you'll see React Router DOM package. And as far as the setup, here's what we want to do. We want to go to app.js, and you know what? Let me start this one up. So npm start. And we want to import three things. We want to get the browser router, which is going to connect to the actual browser, the routes component, which is going to be a parent for all our routes, and then a route component, which we'll use to set up a single page. So let's go there. Let's start setting up the code, and then I'll talk about the props and the rest of the stuff. So let me first navigate to app.js. Like I said, we want to grab three components. Now, eventually, we'll also get a link and some other ones as well. But for now, these are the ones that we want. So browser, router, routes, and a route. And as a quick side note, if you want, you can add browser router in the index.js, basically where you wrap the whole application. But in my case, I'll settle for app.js. Then we want to go with React and then router DOM. And like I said, first we want to connect to the actual browser. So we'll go with browser router. Then we'll set up the route component. So let's go here with routes. And then we need to set up those single routes. And basically the idea is following: where we go with route, then we need to go with path. So this is going to reflect whatever we have in the URL. And when it comes to the homepage, we have special syntax where we go with /. Now, in this local setup, that / means localhost 3000. In production, that is going to be whatever is your domain, whether that is udemy.com or youtube.com or johnsmilk.com. And hopefully you see where I'm going with this. So this is special, this /. But basically, where we have the path, we'll set up whatever URL is going to be here in the URL bar. So for example, if I want to have a page by the name of testing, then instead of /, I'll type path equals to testing. And if I want to set up a nested one, let's say I want to go with products and then /info, then yes, you guessed it. One of the ways how we can set it up is going with products here and then / testing. And if you're a little bit iffy on that, don't worry. As we cover more examples, it's going to be easier to understand that. So first, let's go with path / again. That means our homepage. And then we want to go with element. And at the very basic level, we can just pass in the code directly here in the element. And in the upcoming videos, we'll see how we can use components for that. But at the very basic level, we just need to set up here what we want to see on the screen. So in my case, I'm going to go with simple div here, and I'll say homepage, like so. So let me close out the route component. And once we save, we should see homepage. And we do. So that is my homepage. And like I said, now let's set up some dummy page, and I'll call this testing. So instead of /, which is a syntax for the homepage, I simply go here with testing. Now, if I'm going to write about, then of course, in the URL, I'll have to type /about. Now, if I have testing, then you guessed it, I'll go with / and testing. And what I want to display here, well, let's make this one a little bit more complex just to showcase that, of course, we can set up whatever logic we want over here. So I'm going to go with div, and then inside of it, I'm going to go with heading 2, and then the testing one. Let's save it. And eventually, of course, there's going to be a navbar and all of that cool stuff. But for now, yes, we'll have to do all of the navigation in the URL bar. So let me navigate there. And what is the page name? Well, it is testing, correct? So we go with / and then testing. Once we navigate there, check it out. Now we have our page. And if you want to go back to the home page, you guessed it, we just need to go back to the localhost 3000. So again, we install the package, we grab 3 components, browser router, routes, and route, browser router connects to the browser. Routes is going to be a parent for all our routes. And then for every page, we'll set up a route component with 2 props, a path. So what is going to be the URL? And then what we want to render, we pass into the element. Not bad, not bad. We created our first pages. Life is great. But you would have to agree with me that when it comes to any realistic application, hard coding the page content in app.js is probably not going to be very good on your health. You'll just end up screaming at your computer. So here's the thing. We can also pass in component directly. So path setup stays the same. Again, whatever we'll type over here will match in the URL bar. So if it's / then it's homepage. If it's about, hopefully you see where I'm going with this. But when it comes to element, we can pass here the component. And therefore, you'll find in the pages a bunch of components. Again, the only reason why I set them up is just so we can save a little bit of time on setting up the boilerplate. So for the most components, you'll just find this section with the class name of section. So in here, we just add a little bit of CSS, and you can take a look at it in the index CSS, and heading 2 with about. So these are the pages that we will have in our project. So here's what I want to do. I want to go to app.js. I want to import them all. So for now, just home, about, and product. Notice all of them are coming from the pages. And as a side note, of course, you don't have to name your folder pages. It can be anything. It can be banana pudding. And also, there's nothing special about these components. They're straight up components. The only difference is that now we will use them in the app.js and we'll pass them into the element prop. And as a result, whatever we have in the component will be the content of the page. And yes, in those components, you can import another component, which also is something we're going to do. And as you can see, as a result, it's going to be easier to manage your application instead of hard coding everything in the app.js. So let's try this one out where I want to go to app.js and I want to import 3 components. And lastly, if you want to set up here index.js, if that is your preference, where basically in the pages you import all of the components and then export them, you can also do so. But in my case, I'll just go the long route where I'll say import, then home. And then that one is coming from, and now I'm looking for the pages folder, and more specifically home one. Let me copy and paste here. Let me just change a few things around where I want to go with a about one. So let me select that one. And we also want to go with the product. So let's go here and let's say product. And once we have all of the imports in place, now let's keep the path / Again, this is going to be for the homepage, but let's change it around for a testing one where I'll remove it first. And I'll actually pass here the home component, home. Let's close it. It's also necessary. And check it out. Now we have that heading too. Let's copy and paste and let's just change it around where it's going to be about. And this one will be product. And when it comes to path, in here we'll say about as well as product. And again, we can test it out if we navigate to URL. And then if we go with / about, check it out. Now we have about page. Now you can probably already guess that if I'm going to go to products, we'll navigate to the products page. So that's how we can set up our page contents as components. Again, we set up most likely a folder since there's going to be multiple pages, and we just set up straight up components. There's nothing special about them. They're straight up components. The only one that has more info in here is the login one, but we'll talk about this one a little bit later once we actually get there. And whatever you set up over here, whether that's a bunch of other components coming from other folders and all that, will be the content of the page. And as a result, it's easier to manage your entire application. All right, and up next, let's take a look at how we can navigate around our project, because at the moment, the only way how we can do that is using URL bar, and that is probably not the best user experience. Unlike the traditional multi-page application where we use the href, the link element, in this case, if we want to navigate around our project, so internally, we want to grab the link component from React Router DOM. Now, if we want to go somewhere externally, for example, if I want to go to google.com or johnsmilk.com, then yes, you still need to use the link component like so. So you'll set up a link component, href, and then whatever the URL. But in order to navigate around our project, we'll use the link component instead. And then the link component is looking for one thing. It's looking for to prop. And then notice we just pass in the URL. Now, again, we don't need to go with full URL in here. We just need to go with / and then whatever we have in the app.js. So since I have these pages, / so the homepage, about, and product, kind of makes sense if in the homepage, if I want to go to about page, I need to go with / and then the name is about. Now, these ones do need to match. So make sure that the syntax is correct. So in home.js, I want to set up a link to about.js right after the heading to. And then in the about.js, I want to set back the link to the homepage. So let me try this one out, where first, I guess I'm going to go to the homepage. So let me navigate to the pages. Then we're looking for home.js. Then we want to get the link one. So import, it's a named, imports a link from React Router DOM. And then right after the homepage, let's go with link to. And again, if I want to navigate to product, I'm going to go with / product. Now, if I want to go to about, I'm going to go to / and about. And let's add a name. So whatever we want to display here. And a little bit of styling. Therefore, I'm going to go with class name. And I'm just going to say btn. So once we save, notice, now I have this link to the about page. Now we navigate to about without that full page refresh. And in order to make this a little bit more interesting, why don't we also do the same thing in the about? So then we'll be able to go from one to another one. So let's go to about.js. Same deal. We want to grab the link, import, then link. Probably should have copied and pasted. But anyway, so React Router DOM right after the heading to. Let's go with link to. In this case, I want to go back to the homepage. Let's say back home. And then let's also add that class name. So a little bit of styling, class btn. So now we can nicely go from page to page without that full page refresh. Again, if we want to navigate around our project, we want to grab the link component. It's looking for one thing and one thing only. It's looking for to prop. And in here, you want to pass in the same value that you already have here as far as the path. So if you want to go to about, you go / about. And if you want to go to product, you go to / product. And hopefully you see where I'm going with this. Okay. But what if by mistake the user types some kind of path that doesn't exist? So let's say I'm going to go with / and then hello. At the moment, basically we'll display nothing. Why? Well, because if we take a look at our app.js, we're only handling these routes. We have / home, then about, and then product. And in order to handle this type of scenario, we want to set up an error page where essentially we'll display some kind of error message for every request that doesn't match any of our routes. And we want to do that with a route component. We want to pass in the path with a star. So essentially this will match everything. So if we cannot find those pages over here, then this will collect all of them. And then we want to set up some kind of error page. So first, let's set up this in the app.js, and then we'll work on the error page. Now, there is already a page in the pages, but I just want to add a little bit more content. So first, let's go to app.js. Let's copy and paste. And yes, we want to place here all the way at the end because this catches pretty much everything. So we want to go here with a star. And now let's work on the error page. Where essentially at the moment, again, we have this section with a class of section and heading 2 with an error. But I want to set up a link back home. And as I know, this is what we're going to be working on. So we want to get the link component from React Router DOM. We want to add some kind of logic. So 404, page not found. And then we want to navigate back home. So let's try this one out where, in this case, I'll speed this up. I'll grab the link since we'll need that one. Then after the heading 2, or you know what, let's change this one around where I'm going to go 404. So page not found, a paragraph page not found. And then we want to go with link component 2, where I want to navigate. Well, I want to go back home. And in this case, let's just say back home. Let's save this. We want to import the page. So let's try out the auto import. So I'm going to go here with error and let's see whether I got actually the page. No, it doesn't look like it. So let me try one more time. Yep, over here, I can use the auto import. And notice now we have a nice 404 page. So if I'm going to go with / and testing, same deal. We don't have that particular page in our project. So basically there is no URL that matches that, and therefore we display this error page. Now, if we click on back home, we nicely navigate back home. All right, and up next, let's see how we can add navbar and footer to our project. Now, in this video, I'll quickly show you the most basic approach, which clearly has its limitations since it adds the same components or elements to all of the pages. But don't worry. In the following videos, we're also going to cover more fine-grained approach where we will nest our pages and set up the shared layout. And as far as the basic setup, we simply want to set up the elements above or below the routes. Again, please don't make the mistake and place the element inside of it. You will get an error. But if you place it above or below the routes, this will be added to all of the routes. Like I said, most basic approach, but there's definitely situations where this is a nice solution. So let's navigate back and let me go above the routes. Let me set up the nav component, basically an element. And yes, of course, you can set up the component, import it here. And also, of course, you can add the links. Now, I'm not going to add the links in this scenario, since we're going to do that in the upcoming examples, and I don't want to repeat myself and waste your time. Basically, I'll go here with our navbar. And the same thing we can do with footer. I'll say our footer. And once you save, you'll notice that in all of the pages, we'll have the navbar as well as the footer. If we navigate to about, the same is going to work with product. And it's not going to be surprised if we navigate to another page and we get the same result. Navbar and footer gets added to all of the pages. So this is the most basic approach how we can set up some shared layout, where essentially in this case, we're adding both of these elements to all of our pages. All right. And up next, let's add a navbar to our project. And in the process, we'll learn how to set up nested routes, shared layout, and index page. Since I want to cover everything step by step, please be prepared to refactor our application a few times. So if I want to nest some routes inside of the another route, I just need to go with the parent route. So notice, instead of self-closing the home one, I'm going to go with an opening tag and the closing tag. And then I just decide which routes I want to set up in here. And there's going to be multiple issues with our original setup. The main focus is that now all of these routes will be nested inside of the home one. And basically, they will be relative to whatever we have as a path to a home route. And don't worry, I'll show you also with another example just so you can see better. Again, we'll refactor our application multiple times, so don't worry if in the beginning some stuff breaks. So let's navigate back to app.js. And like I said, I want to nest about, product, and the error page inside of the home one because I do want to set up a shared layout and I want to set up also a navbar. So let's try this out where instead of self-closing, let's go here, let's say route, and then close it. And as I said, of course, there's a syntax error like so. And like I said, there's going to be multiple issues. If I go to about, I'll actually see the homepage. And yes, that is something we're going to fix in a few videos. Now, the main idea right now is the fact that these are all relative to the homepage. And it's kind of hard to see since this is homepage, since we're doing the setup on homepage. So therefore, let me showcase that if I'm going to go here with dashboard instead, right now you'll notice that you won't be able to navigate to an about page. You'll have to go to a dashboard /about. So that's the key about nesting routes, where whatever you have here as a parent will be the main route. And then whatever is inside is going to be / and whatever path is over here. So let me save it. Notice we cannot see anything. But if we go to dashboard, which is technically our home route right now, and then about, then everything technically works. Now, we still don't display the about one, but we'll fix that in a second. So hopefully this is clear where, again, in our case, we're using as a parent our home one. But for example, if I'm going to go outside of this home one, and if I'm just going to say, okay, let me set up the dashboard, you'll see how basically this works. Again, you won't be able to see actually what is displayed in the stats, for example, the page that I'm about to set up. But you will be able to see that this is how it works. So element, and then let me go quickly with div over here. I'll say dashboard, like so. And then we want to nest this. So let me go here with the route, and then inside of it, we'll set a path, and then whatever path I want. So in my case, I'm going to go with stats. So now we're looking for dashboard and then stats. So this is how normally we'll nest routes. And again, we won't be able to see this stats div because we need to add a little bit more logic, which we'll do in the next video. This is just to showcase how this nesting is going to work. And if we're going to go to a dashboard and stats, now you'll see that we'll have this dashboard one. But the route exists. So technically, there are no issues over there. Now, if I go to dashboard, this is what I'm displayed. And now if I go to about, again, since our parent over here is the home route, that's why we see the about page. Again, that's the first step, how we can nest routes inside of the parent route. And then whatever we have for a path is going to be the main path. And then whatever we set up over here is going to be the parent plus this value over here. So if you go here with dashboard, then it's going to be dashboard about, dashboard product. And since in our case it's a home page, we go with about and then product. Okay, so our initial setup works somewhat all right, where the URLs are matching whatever we set up there with nested routes. But the problem is the result. We keep seeing all the time the homepage. So how we can fix that and how we can also set up a shared layout. Well, we need to go to the parent, in our case, home, and import outlet, the outlet component. And then we just need to display this outlet component. And whatever we'll set up around this outlet component is going to be the shared layout across the pages that are nested inside of the parent. And then the actual page content will be displayed here in the outlet one. And I think it's going to make a little bit more sense if we set it up. And that way you'll right away see what I'm talking about. So let me go to home.js. We want to grab this outlet component. And the position is really up to you. Again, you'll see once we add Navbar that, of course, however you set up this return, that is going to be how your shared layout is going to look like. Now, I'm not going to keep this link. I think we're good to go. So I'm going to go with outlet. And now, once I save, actually, I see this home page. So at the moment, this will be shared all across the pages. But I nicely also see the about page. And if I'm going to navigate to a product, same deal. I still see this home page. So this one is shared all across these nested pages. And also I see the actual content from the products page. So now we can put two and two together. If this is shared all across the nested pages, why don't we set up the navbar and add some links? And as a result, we'll be able to navigate from page to page, from home to about and to the products. Now, in order to set that up, we need to go with new component. So I'll set up the components folder, and in there I'll create navbar.js, and we want to import a link one. And then let's set up the nav. Then let's import that in home.js. And again, whatever return you set up over here, that's how all those pages will be displayed. So if you do decide, let's say underneath the section, to set up a footer, you can definitely do so. Again, this is going to be that shared layout all across the pages. And don't worry, the home page, the actual parent, is going to look somewhat funky. We'll work on that one next. So first, let's worry about the navbar. And I want to do that by navigating here. Please don't set this one up on the finals because it's already there. We have the components. So in the source, I want to create actually not a new file. I want to create a new folder, components. And this, of course, also showcases that, of course, like I said, in all of the components in the pages, we can use other components because they're just good old regular components. I'll set up navbar.js. Now, there's going to be one more file because I'll show you the active link as well. But let's not worry about it right now. I'm using this extension to create my component. This is going to be navbar. Like I said, I do want to get the link. So let me close the sidebar here. I'll say link from, and then I'm looking for React router DOM. And then we want to go with a nav. Now, I did add a little bit of styling in the CSS. That's why I'll add here class name, navbar, and then we just want to set up the links. Now, I will set up links for about, products, and homepage, but we might add one more for the login one a little bit later. So let's go here with link to, this is going to be to the homepage, and then let's add a text. Let's copy and paste. Now this one will be to about page. Again, whatever pages you have. So in our case, we have about and products as well as the homepage. Let's set up about. Let's set up over here product. And now we want to navigate to the home one and import that navbar. So let's go with import navbar, and basically we want to get the component. And like I keep saying, whatever structure we'll set up over here is going to be the result in the browser. So I don't want to keep this section right now as it is. Instead, I'm going to go with React fragment since we need to return one element. Then I'll place a navbar on the top. After that, I will remove this home page, and then let me bring this section up. So I'll display the navbar like so with these links. And in here, in the section, I will have that outlet. Basically, whatever we have inside of the page. So whatever we have in the about, in the product, essentially all the pages that we have nested. And as a result, notice, not only I display the contents of the about page or the products page, but we also have the navbar. So if you want to add a footer, go ahead. Most likely you'll want to do that beneath the section. And with this in place, now we can set up the index page, because at the moment, if we navigate here, nothing is displayed. So let's fix that in the next video. All right, so our functionality is almost complete. The only thing that's missing is the content in the homepage. First, let's understand why that is happening. In the app.js, we have nicely nested the routes. And for the parent, we have the home. And inside of the home, we have that outlet. In there, we display product, about, as well as the error page, something that I actually forgot to add last video. So if I'm going to go with hello, notice again, we'll still have that nice layout, the shared one with the navbar and all that. And in here, we display the content. But when it comes to actual homepage, well, we don't have any specific content here. That's why we render pretty much nothing. We just have the navbar. And technically, if you want, you can add that heading to or whatever content you want, but just keep in mind that that will be shared all across the components, basically the pages we have nested. So what is the solution? Well, the solution is to set up index routes. And in here, I just added some text from the React router docs. You can definitely read it through, but I think it's going to be faster if I just showcase the syntax. So if we have these nested routes for the main one, for the parent, we can set up the index route. And it has a special syntax. Where we go with route, then we pass in the prop by the name of index. And this will always, always, always match whatever we have here for the parent path. So if this is going to be dashboard, then yes, this index is going to match the dashboard. However, since in our case we have home, we have home. And then again, the same deal, we go with element. Now, the gotcha here is that we still want to set up some kind of shared layout, correct? And therefore, we'll have to create a new component. And in that new component, we'll basically take whatever we have right now in the home one, and we'll add that one as a shared layout in here as an element. So whatever we have right now in the home, we'll create a new component. We'll call this shared layout. So now we'll always share this layout all across these pages, but then the home one will have its own content. Hopefully this makes sense. So now let me save this, and let me first go to a pages. Then we want to create a new one, and I'm going to call this shared layout. As always, you can call this shake and bake. It doesn't really matter. Let's grab the home one. And you know what? Also, as we'll be setting this up, we can remove that section because each of them have already that section with a class name of section. So that is an overkill. So let me navigate to shared layout, copy and paste. Now let me remove this section. We don't need it. So now we have only two things. We have layout, which will have the page content, whatever is the page, the home page, the about page, the products page, and also whatever we want to put it around it. So in my case, that is just a navbar. And once we have this one in place, let's navigate to app.js. We want to set up that shared layout first. So let's say here, shared layout. And yep, of course it breaks. So let me copy and paste. I'll say here, shared layout. And now we just need to work on that index page. So if we want to set up a page that will match the parent in this nested URL structure, we go with route, then index, and then we pass in the element. So in this case, we want to go with home. And then we need to navigate, and first of all, we need to close it here. Then we want to navigate to the home one. And since at the moment I'm displaying the navbar, we want to remove some stuff where I think I'll remove both the link and outlet. I don't think we'll need it since we already have the navbar anyway. And then we just need to come up with whatever we want to render. So I don't want the outlet. I don't want a navbar. Just want to go with my good old heading 2, and I'll say homepage. And yes, we can also remove this sucker. Like I said, yes, I purposely did this the long way to kind of showcase how we get to that shared layout and what issues we're going to get along the way. So yes, there was a little bit of refactoring. The good news is that check out our result. We have homepage, which displays home, then about, then products, and then if we have some kind of page that doesn't exist, let's say products and hello, then we display homepage and we nicely navigate back. So hopefully this is clear. Where if we want to set up this shared layout, first we need to come up with a parent. In our case, that is index. But again, I showed you example with dashboard. Whatever you type over here, that's going to be the parent. Then most likely you'll come up with some kind of shared layout. So what you want to share across those pages. And as far as the parent, you'll set up the index. So that will be the content only for the actual index, and then the rest of the pages. And remember, we need to use outlet to render those results. All right. And before we start working with URL parameters, let's also see how we can set up active links. And effectively what that means is that once we're on the page, this link will have specific styling, whatever we want to set up. And in order to do that, I will create a new file just so this typical setup stays for your reference. And instead of link, we want to grab the NavLink. Now, what's special about the NavLink is the fact that in style and also in a class name, we can pass in the function where there's a property by the name of isActive. Again, this is provided right away by React Router. And then based on that value, we can set up some type of styling. Again, this is the straight up inline CSS approach, but we can also do that with classes. And of course, we'll take a look at both examples. Let's start working on the main setup first, where in the components, let's create styled navbar. And again, the reason why I'm setting up a separate file is just so you have right away a reference for the basic setup. Let's copy and paste. Again, we're looking for NavLink instead. And let's change these suckers as well. So we're looking for NavLink. For now, let's not do anything. Let's not add any kind of logic. We simply want to navigate to app.js, or I'm sorry, what app.js? Shared layout, my bad. And I'll copy and paste, and I'll just say shared layout, shared, or I'm sorry, not shared layout. For some reason, I'm totally tripping here. So styled and then navbar, of course. My apologies. And for some reason, I didn't change this one as well. And instead of typical navbar, let's go here with styled navbar. And once we save, we right away notice that our active link gets different styling. And first, let's just quickly cover why is that happening. And second, we'll take a look at the code that controls that. So first, why is that happening? Well, again, by default, if we use that NavLink, the React router by default, even without us doing anything, adds this class of active to it. And if you take a look at index CSS, and more specifically, if you just keep on scrolling, somewhere around the navbar, you'll find this active class. So if you just set up an active class, if you use NavLink, the class will be automatically added, and as a result, you'll get these styles. So now let's see how we can control that code a little bit more. First of all, let me close all my files and all that here. So let me start from scratch. I think it's getting quite busy. And let's just take a look how we can add good old regular CSS to it. So I'm in the style navbar. Then we want to go with style over here. And I'm not going to add to all of them, but I will showcase for the home one. So I'm going to go with style. I want to go with interpolation. And like I said, we want to pass here the function. Again, this function, the value and all that is provided by React Router DOM. Now keep in mind, this is not just good old parameter here. So don't say is active. We need to specifically look for object and then is active. That's how we can properly access that. And then since we're setting up here inline styles, we can just use a ternary operator where we go with a return. So whatever we return in this object will be applied to this link. And more specifically, I want to look for the color. And then I want to check is active. So what is the value? So if it is true, I want to add color red. And if it's not, then I want to go with gray. Please keep in mind that we can set up whatever functionality you want over here. I'm just going for straight up color, of course. If you prefer setting up your CSS in line, you can add whatever the properties with values you want. And now check it out. If we navigate to homepage, the style will be red. So the color of the link is going to be red. And yes, if we add this to the rest of the links, it's also going to work. I already set up the reference for you over here. So in my case, in the style navbar, I'll just showcase the class approach, since in my opinion, that's probably is going to be something you will use more often. So if you ever need this reference, it's available in the README. So let me remove this style here. And now instead of style, I'm going to go with class name. And if we take a look at the CSS, you'll notice that not only I have the active one, I also have some general style for the link. And yes, of course, like I keep repeating, you would normally add more code over here. So instead of just relying on the active one, I'll say, all right, what is the value for is active? If it's true, then I want to add link class as well as the active one. Basically, this is where I'll have more styles normally. And if it's not, then it's just going to be link class, which just gives those general styles. So let's try this one out where, again, we're going for the function. In the function, we're looking for the object, and then we go with is active. And then let's set up that ternary operator where we want to go with is active. And you know what? I think in this case, I'm just going to go with implicit return. So is active. If it's the case, then I'm going to go with link and active. And then if it's not, then I'm just going to go with link one. I do want to grab this entire thing. So copy, hopefully there are no bugs there. And then let's just set up on all of these ones. Let's save. This is going to be our default setup. And then once we click, now of course we get that active class as well. And as you saw, there's multiple ways how we can set up. If you just have the active class, it will be added by default to that NavLink. So technically you don't need to do anything, but most likely you will set up the class approach. Also keep in mind that, of course, you do have this inline CSS option as well. Most importantly, you have NavLink, then the function, then object. In the object you have is active, and then you can use this value to set up your logic. All right, and now let's see how we can read URL parameters. And as a result, we'll have some dynamic pages. And for this, I just want you to imagine a products page where we display a bunch of products. And then once we click on that one specific product, we display it in a separate page. However, here's the key. I don't want to set up a separate page for every product that I have. It makes more sense for me to set up one page, which is going to act as a placeholder. And then I'll just get the data that I need to display. So that way I can use the same page, for example, for 1,000 products or 3,000. And hopefully you see where I'm going with this. And in order to set up URL parameters, we want to go with this colon and then whatever the parameter name. call this shake and bake, call this vegan food truck. In my case, since we'll display products, I just thought it's going to make more sense if I'm going to go with colon and then product ID. But this name is really up to you. Now, as far as this URL, this can be straight up like so, where we go with colon and product ID. This can be product stats and then product ID. Again, this part is really up to you. I just thought that going with products and then product ID is going to make more sense. And before we begin, I also want to quickly mention that yes, you can set up that nested structure like we did over here for a product and product ID as well. I just went with this setup for two reasons. First, I really want to focus on the URL params, and I think it's going to be better if we use this setup. So that way it's easier for us. We don't need to do this whole song and dance. And second, I also want to showcase that if you don't have the shared layout, which in this case we won't, you don't always have to use that approach. You can also use this approach as well, where you go with whatever is the main URL. And then in here specifically, we go with this dynamic option. Hopefully that is clear. So first, let's navigate right now to app.js and get that single product. So if we take a look at the pages, there is already a single product, it's just a heading too. So why don't we, in the app.js, first of all, set it up, and I'll do that right after the product. So let's go with route, then path, then we'll go with product, and then that product ID. And you'll see that it is essentially a property. So again, we can name it whatever we want. So we go with colon product ID. And then what is going to be the placeholder? Well, we want to go with element, and then we want to go with that single product, which hopefully is going to work, but it doesn't look like it. So that's why sometimes this auto import is annoying, because it doesn't work. So let me save this. And yes, of course I have the error. So let me go here with import and then single product like so. And that is coming from, and we're looking in the pages, I believe, right? And then we have single product. So now everything works. We have that single product. And now if we go to URL, and if we just type whatever gibberish we want, so eventually there's going to be actual data, because I already prepared for you. But let's say if we type 123, we have single product. If we type, I don't know, 333, we'll also get that single product. So that's the placeholder we're going to use. So now let's navigate to the single product, and let's take a look how we can access it. So this is the setup where we go with that colon and then whatever is going to be the parameter name. So in my case, product ID. Now, if we need to access it, we need to get the hook from React Router DOM. So use params, and we'll also get the link. And then we want to invoke that hook. And notice how this name now needs to match whatever we have over here. So as long as they match, you'll be in good shape. And then for the time being, let's just display it. And let's navigate back to the main product page. So let's set this one up where I don't think I'll need style navbar anymore, but I do want to navigate to single product. Like I said, we're going to be looking for two things. We're going to get the link first, and also we want to get that hook, use param, which is going to access those parameters in the URL. Then all of that is coming from React, and yep, this is not correct. We need to go with import. My apologies, not const. So let's go with React Router DOM. Then as far as the return, first we want to grab that product ID. And you know what, as a side note, why don't we do this? Why don't we just log this sucker? So let's say here, use params, and you'll clearly see what am I talking about. So let's invoke this, and then let's navigate to the console and check it out. We have the object, and what do you know? We have product ID 333. So if we'll change this around 123, then of course that value will be also 123. So now we want to pull this out from the use params from the object. So let's go with product and then ID. Now that is equal to use params. Let's invoke it. And like I said, let's set up that link back to the product. Of course, if you want, you can navigate also back home, but I guess it's going to be back to the products, back to product. And then where we have right now the single product, for time being, let's go with heading 4, and let's display the ID. So let's say here, product, and then ID. Let's save it and check it out. Now we have 1, 2, 3. Again, if we'll change this around to 4, 5, 6, 7, then this is going to be the value. So next video, we'll iterate over the products that I provided in, I believe, data.js. We'll render all of them in the products page. And then from there, we'll set up a single product page as well. All right. And once we have the single product page in place, now in the products.js, let's iterate over the products that are coming from the data. And then for every item, I want to return an article. We'll have to use the key since, of course, this is a React. And then I want to access product name as well as product ID, which I'll pass into this link. And notice the URL. Again, this needs to match whatever we have in app.js. Since in the app.js we have products and then product ID, this is where we dynamically pass in the ID property, which is going to be in every product. And once we set this one up, then in the single product, we'll use that ID. And instead of rendering it on the screen like we have right now, we'll basically pull out that one specific product, then we'll get the image and name, and then we'll display it. Now, before we continue, let me right away say that yes, normally we'll get this data from the API or database or whatever, but since I want to keep this nice and cute, that's why I prepared this data.js, which essentially is just an array of products. Each product has the ID, so this is something we'll see over here in the URL, name as well as the image, which is just an external URL. So these images are stored on the cloud somewhere, so that way we don't need to bother with the local image setup. So first, let's go to a products.js. And we want to get the data. Now, if you want, of course, you can log it, but I'm just going to assume that it's there. And also we want to get the link because each and every product will be wrapped in a link. So React router down. Then after that, let's go with import, then product from, and like I said, we're looking for the data.js. And as far as the return, it looks like for some reason I set it up as a React fragment. My bad. Let me just remove. We'll have a section here. We'll have product. And then right after that, we want to go with div with the class of product. So again, there's a little bit of styling over there. Let's go with product map. We're mapping over. And then as far as the return, let's go for product again. If you want to log it, you can definitely do so. In my case, I know that essentially there is going to be all of those properties. So I want to return article. I do want to add right away a key. And I'll just say here, product ID. Then I also want to go with heading 5 and I'll say product name. And also we want to set up that link. Now, I believe previously I mentioned that we'll wrap it. My apologies. We'll just set up the link here. So let's go here with link to. And now remember, this is dynamic. So now we are not passing this manually 4, 5, 6, or 7. We actually go with product path and then that dynamic ID value. So let's go with template string, then product, then /, and now let's access that sucker. Let's say product, then ID, and then inside of it, let's just say more info. Let's save it, and this is that single product, so we won't see anything. But if we navigate back, check it out. Now we have a list of products, title, as well as the link. So this is going to be more info. Now notice we have this unique ID in 2 places. We have it over here, and we also render it. So now we just need to add some code to single product, where first I'll grab it. Okay, that's good. But I also want to get the products from there, right? From the data. So products from then data. Okay, good. Like I keep saying, normally this is going to happen with some kind of fetch request from the API and all that, but not in this case. So I want to get the single product. And that is going to be with products, then use find. And then I'll just say, get me the product whose ID matches the product ID. So product here, and then return a product ID equals to product ID, like so. So product.id equals to product ID. Beautiful. Then let's pull out image and name. We don't need the ID anymore. And then let's set it up in our return, where first we're going to go with a heading 5, I guess. And instead of product ID, I want to display the name. And then right above it or below it or whatever, let's just go with img source, and that will be equal to that external image. So let's set up the image over here. If you want, we can also set up the alternative. Let's close the image. And as a result, we get this single product. And like I said, now we can set up 1,000 products. So we can render them in the products page. And then for each product, there's going to be a single product page, essentially, which acts as a placeholder. We'll fetch the data about that one specific product, and we'll render that in the single product page. And now let's see how we can navigate around our project programmatically. In our case, that is going to be once we submit the form. And also, let's see how we can restrict access to certain routes. Before we begin, though, please keep in mind that normally we will use context to store our user value. In this case, I just didn't see the point of setting up the entire boilerplate. And we want to start in the app.js, where we want to set up user state value with use state, and initial value will be null. Then we want to import 2 more pages. We want to import the login page as well as the dashboard one. Again, the boilerplate placeholders are already there. And then in the login one, we want to pass in the function, the one that sets up the user. And in the dashboard, we want to pass in the actual user. So let's start in the app.js, where we want to get the use state from React. So import use state that is coming from React. And let's set up that state value. So in here, let's go with const user set user that is equal to use state. And let's pass in the null. Then let's grab both of those pages. So we're talking about the dashboard as well as the login one. Now, the dashboard doesn't have anything. Pretty much it's the same boilerplate, and login has a little bit more, and I'll cover that in a second. Now, since my auto imports were not particularly successful, let's try it here, where I'm going to go with dashboard. And again, it's not working. So I don't know what's up with that. So let's go with pages. Then let's access the dashboard one. Let's copy and paste. In this case, let's delete. And let's just go with login. Then right after that single product, first of all, I'll make my browser bigger here. I want to go above the error one, and let's set up that route, the login one. So path will be login. And then we want to go with element, and let's pass in the login one. And then instead of the login element, let's also pass in set user is equal to set user. So now we're passing in this function. Now we do want to close this one, meaning the route. So let's save this. Then we'll copy and paste. This is going to be dashboard. Then the component will be dashboard as well. And instead of set user, we'll go with user. So user is equal to user. Let's save this. And now let's navigate to the login one. And you know what? Actually, I also want to add the link to the login one. So not to the dashboard, but to the login one. And if you remember, that was in the styled navbar. So let's navigate here and let's add one more link. Let's copy and paste. This is not going to go to products. This is going to go to login, and then also the text will be login. Let's save it. We have the login. Once we navigate here, we notice that we have the form, which is awesome. So now let's navigate to the page and we'll take a look at what we have and what changes we need to add. So I imported use state. I have two state values. I have name and email, and I right away have the handle submit where we have prevent default. Pretty much basic setup. Also, both of them are set up as controlled inputs, so they're tied to the state value. So as you start typing, you basically will have both of the values over there. Now, if you want to test this out, let's go with log and then let's say name and email. Again, pretty typical setup. So I'm going to go here with John at john@gmail.com. And once we log, check this out. We have both of the values. So here's what we want to do. In the login one, we want to check whether both values are there. If they're there, first we want to set the user. So this one is coming from the app.js, and yes, I purposely went here the long route. And then we want to get useNavigate from React Router DOM, and we want to navigate programmatically to the dashboard. So notice, in this case, it's not happening once we're clicking on a link or NavLink. In this case, we'll navigate there using Navigate. And in order to invoke that, we get the useNavigate, we invoke it. This is going to be equal to navigate. And then in here, we just provide where we want to navigate. And then in the dashboard, since we can access the user, I just want to say hello and then the username. Now, we are using optional chaining because remember, initially, it's going to be null. So let's try to set this one up where in the login, first, let's grab that navigate. So use navigate. That is coming from React Router DOM. Then I already have the console log. Okay, beautiful. Let me remove it. And in here, above the handle submit, let's set up that navigate. So navigate is equal to useNavigate. Let's invoke that. And then we're going to go with if condition. So if there is no name or there is no email. So if one of them is missing, then we want to return. And yes, that is the check that I'm going to set up right now. So there's going to be no error messages, nothing like that. I just want to check whether one of them is empty. If one of them is empty, we'll simply return. Now, if both of them are provided, we'll go with set user. Now we just want to grab it from the params. So let's set up here set user. Again, this is coming from the app.js, like so. And first we want to invoke it. We want to go with set user. Let's pass in the name equals to name and email equals to email. If you want to shorten this up, of course, you can definitely do so. And then let's go with navigate. And where we want to go to / and a dashboard. Let's save this one right now. Let's try to do that with only John. So if I just provide one value, notice we cannot do anything. However, if I go John at gmail.com, we'll notice that we'll nicely navigate to the dashboard one. And in the dashboard, I just want to display the name. And the way we set it up, if we take a look at the dashboard, we just want to grab the user, since that is what we're passing in the app.js again. And more specifically, I'll look for name. However, there's going to be optional chaining, since initially it's going to be null. So let me navigate right now to the dashboard one. Let me grab the user. And then once we destructure it, where we have the heading 4, instead, I'll say hello. And let's just access the username. Like I said, optional chaining. And then let's go for name. Once we save, we have hello, John. So if we'll navigate to a login and we'll go with Peter instead, and Peter at gmail.com. First, we'll programmatically navigate once we submit the form using the useNavigate, which we imported, then invoked it, and then we just pass in the path, the dashboard one. And in the dashboard page, we actually display the name of the user, which in this case is Peter. All right, and now let's see how we can restrict access to certain routes. And first in the pages, we'll have to create that component. So in this case, it's going to be protected route. And then in the app.js, you want to wrap whatever page you want to restrict access to in that protected route. So yes, in the element, you'll have to go with protected route and then whatever page you want to render. So automatically this page will be restricted. So let's start here in the pages. Let's set up new file. I'll call this protected route. For time being, it doesn't really matter what we display here since the logic is going to change anyway. And once we have the file ready to go, let's navigate back to app.js. We want to go with protected route. And then since I want to restrict access to the dashboard, now I want to wrap the dashboard with a protected route. And I'll set it up as self-closing. And let's go over here with protected route. And like I said, normally we'll pass in the user using useContext. However, in this case, since it's right away in the app.js, I'll just go with user equals to user, since we'll need to check it. And then if the user exists, only then we'll display the dashboard. So now notice, even though technically URL says dashboard, we're displaying this protected route because now we're wrapping dashboard with protected route. So up next, let's set up the functionality where in the protected route, we want to import NavLink component from React router DOM. And then we want to access two things. We want to access the children. So this is going to be that dashboard page or whatever page we place in that protected route. And also a user. And then we'll check if the user doesn't exist. We want to use NavLink component and we'll just say where we want to navigate. However, if everything is correct, we'll return children. In our case, it's going to be our dashboard. So let's go to protected route. And first, let's grab that navigate. So I'm going to go here with import, then navigate. So navigate component from React router DOM. Then let's access both props. So children's prop, so children, and then also user. And let's set up that logic where if there is no user, then we want to go with return and navigate to, and I'm just going to go to homepage. Please keep in mind, we can navigate wherever we want. And then if everything is correct, then we'll just return children. So with this in place, what's going to happen once we refresh, we'll have homepage. And if let's say we try to somehow manually get to the dashboard, the access will be restricted. Notice how we navigate back. Why? Well, because there is no user. So only if we go to a login one and add that user, in my case, John at gmail.com, then we'll be successful and we'll navigate to the dashboard and display it. And again, I guess the biggest gotcha is the fact that in the app.js, where you render the pages, you do need to wrap it. You need to wrap whichever page you want to restrict access to in the protected route component. Beautiful. And at the very end, I just want to set up the product and product ID as a nested route. And this is the case where if you want to challenge yourself, you can stop the video and try doing it yourself. So basically, whatever we have right now here with a homepage where we nested rest of the routes, I also want to do the same thing with the products, where we want to place a product ID inside of the product. We do want to set up the index one as well as some shared layout. So again, if you want to try doing that for yourself, stop the video, try to solve this puzzle again. Basically, the setup is exactly the same. You'll probably want to use a different shared component. That's it. So let's start here by setting up that component. So I'm going to go here with shared product and layout. I know it's somewhat long name, but we'll deal with that. Then let's grab quickly the code over here, since I don't want to waste my time on imports and all that. So I have here link. I don't think I'll need that. What I want is outlet. I won't need the navbar. And as far as the shared layout, well, there's not really much that I want to add over here. I guess I'm just going to take a look at the products one. So in here, I just have heading 2. So let's do it this way, where we'll go with heading 2. We'll go with products. We'll keep that one. And we won't need the import for the style navbar as well. Then let's go back to our app.js. We want to grab that long component. So let's say here import shared, and it was product layout JS. So that is coming from the pages, I believe, correct? So shared product layout. Let's close this. And before we continue in the product.js, we can just remove the heading 2. And let's set up the entire logic here, where first we want to go with the route. The path will be products, correct? So we're going to go here with products. Now, as far as the element, we'll go with that shared product layout. Let's close this one. And then in here, let's set up both of these routes. Now we can remove the path. We can just say index. And for this sucker, it's just going to be product ID. And once we save, I'll make this one bigger now. And as you can see, the result did not change. So the functionality is exactly the same. The only difference is that now again, we're using this nested routes approach, where we have the parent, we have the shared layout. By the way, this is a tiny typo here. So shared layout, then this is going to be our index page, which is our products page. And we'll also have a single product page. And that should do it for React Router 6 tutorial. Hopefully everyone enjoyed it. And I'll see you in the next videos.